just gonna start over because that previous video got very buggy very quickly. But that's alright. I'm back. So this video today is going to be for the fire signs, that is Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. Thank you for your patience. So I have this Palo Santo candle from Target. It also has vetiver in it, which is a wonderful ingredient. And if you would, just focus on the flame for a moment. Oh, thank you, Eve. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you stopped by, and best of luck with your studies. Just focus on the flame. Any residual energies you might want to shed, just feel free to release them. Any negativity, anything like that. You can even, if you like, pretend that you are blowing out the flame. So as you inhale the divine white light of Source. And then as you exhale, if you like, you can pretend that you're blowing out the flame. You can see it flickering there. And that will be returning all those energies to Source, where they can be transmuted. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. The wick on that candle has a tendency to kind of lop over and drown itself in the wax. So we'll see if that happens today. And we're going to start in with the fire sign of Aries. And this is, if you're curious, the Eternal Tarot. It is a Gnostic style deck based on Kabbalistic correspondences. I have another deck that's very much like this also, called the Egyptian Skier deck. I will also be doing bibliomancy for the readings this week. using for that is Sun Tzu, The Art of War. And then finally, if you want to join us over on the members side of the channel, I will be using this obsidian for crystal scrying. Let's see, is that better? Okay. You are cordially invited to join us, but of course your presence is appreciated here on the channel in whatever form it takes. So let's get started with the sign of Aries, shall we? Aries, if you would, just kind of gently relax and allow any concerns that you have that you'd like to address in the reading to float up to the forefront of your thoughts. Just very gently. And allow them to wait there. Okay. So let's see what we have here. Very interesting so far. Haven't seen that card come out yet. Okay. Now, all of the water sign readings went pretty long yesterday, so I'm not sure if that will happen again today or not. Write down the Aries timestamp. And let's get started. So here in the past for you, Aries, we do have a ram, a fellow ram. I believe the name of this deity is Banebjejet, and they were an entity in the underworld. This is, of course, to indicate the devil card. We have down here at the bottom, passion. This is a Neptune in Leo correspondence. So a lot of creativity and passion, but things being very nebulous and unclear at the same time. This card is showing up in the reverse for you in the past, Aries, indicating that there might be things in your life that you are trying to conquer. These could be lesser impulses, could be baser needs, could be disease, could be addiction. There are all kinds of situations in which the devil card might come out. And I show that this is an issue that you have been working on and will continue to work through still. And Again, it could be something over which you have a lot of control. It could be something over which you don't have very much control at all. So, of course, no judgment coming from me. What else do we have here? Here in the place of the significator, we have the card about thought. And this is somebody who is constructing a statue. This is a Saturnian correspondence, so a very solid, established energy. But we typically associate this kind of activity with air sign energy. So it's very interesting that in this deck it's corresponded to Saturn, because that's kind of the opposite. That's taking that thought and making it concrete. But then I think that the name of the card should be like construction or something. And I think in the other deck, it is given a slightly different name. So that makes sense. We do have the head depicted down here, showing the intellect. And of course, this person bringing their ideas quite literally to life through sculpture. Now, this card is in the reverse for you in the current situation, Aries. And we had that card about passion coming through in the past. What you might be struggling with at this time is bringing a particular idea to fruition. Crossing that, we have the card about love and desire. Love and desire. And that does look a lot like Sekhmet up at the top, this deity depicted here. We do have one of the serpent, one of the cobra goddesses. It could be Wadjet, could be Renenutet, depicted here, interlaced with this lily or lotus. This is a sun correspondence card, solar correspondence. Now, love and desire, you can see these two people coming together. So there might be a relationship involved in this situation. Now, at this particular time, it's difficult to see if the relationship is proving to be a distraction or if the relationship is part of this situation that is helping you to move forward. I hope you'll excuse me. I have to keep my throat clear. Down at the bottom, so if you have across your Celtic cross, laid out a 12 houses wheel, down at the bottom is the Imam Silai, and that's the cusp of the third and fourth houses. It shows a lot about the origins and foundations upon which what you find in the midheaven, your goal or destiny, that's what it will be built upon. And down in the Imam Silai, we have generosity. This is a Jupiter correspondence. We have a priest depicted here with a plate of offerings. And above the priest, we have depicted a solar deity. This is probably the Aten disk, which during the period of Akhenaten was worshipped as a monotheistic deity. We do have pillars on either side, expressing mercy and severity or polarization. Down here at the bottom, we also have someone who is in bondage and possibly being offered as a tribute to someone, which is an interesting dichotomy because here, a priest with this plate full of offerings, this is probably being offered to a deity, but a tribute of human chattel would be more typical for something that you would be offering to the pharaoh, right? Or a leader of some kind. So this generosity could be expressed toward you at this time, or you could be doing generosity toward others. And generosity doesn't just have to do with money. It has to do with our love, our energy, being generous with our energy, being, lending a kind ear to someone in a time of need. Those are possibilities for this situation also. From your perspective, we have the learning card. We see here the child being tutored and the adult who is doing the tutoring. There could be a parent-child relationship between these two. And we see that just as cycles with the moon, and just as the moon reflects the light of the sun, that there is a cycle taking place of this information being passed along through generations. We do have, initially I thought that might be Anubis, but it could also be Wepwawet, or I think Duamutef was one of the sons of Horus. And I think that's the name of the son who has the jackal head. But don't quote me on that. I don't quite remember. This being in your perspective in the current situation, Aries, you might be at this time very generous with your information. You might be teaching others. And there might not be a lot of monetary return on that right now. Now, that's very interesting because remember, in the place of the significator, we had thought coming out in the reverse. So it could be that at this time you are digesting the ideas of others through the process of education. You could be the one doing the learning at this time. A lot of times in academia, as you are teaching others, you have to put like certain aspects of your own work on hold. So that could be the case at this time. Let's keep going for now. Maybe we'll come back to these things. From an outside perspective, looking in, this is the Fool card in this deck. Now, the Fool card in this particular deck is put not at the beginning and not at the end, but before the World card, which is called Transformation, I think. Oh gosh, it becomes such a mess when I'm having allergies. This is Uranus in Aquarius. So has to do with novel ideas, fresh beginnings. Hi, Glovefed. How are you today? We see that this person is dressed as a priest. Now, they are riding on an alligator, but the alligator is pointed in one direction, and they are looking in the other direction.
They are holding this was scepter, which is an indicator of power, and they are also holding an ankh, which is the symbol of life. Then up here at the top, we see an eclipse occurring. So there's this idea that the moon is blocking out the sun, and that temporarily there will be utter darkness as though it was night, which becomes obfuscating. Remember, the moon card itself is about traveling paths that are not well lit and which are beset on danger by both sides, on both sides. And so this card has elements of that. The transmutation. This person is moving forward, but they're very aware of the past. They're in the process of transforming, but not quite there yet. And that transmutation would be more like lycanthropy, possibly, like shape-shifting into an animal or a beast of some kind, rather than a transformation that we think of into a different stage. Not like a metamorphosis as much, but more like shape-shifting. And it wouldn't have to be necessarily into an animal, but you could think about it like a glamoury too. And the best thing about glamoury, of course, is fake it till you make it. If you keep imagining and building up that image around yourself, eventually it becomes the truth. So other people see this about you at this time, Aries. So you might be very much putting out there this image that you have a lot of novel ideas to put forth. And I do very much think that you have something incubating at this time, but it might not be quite ready yet. Love and desire could potentially also be about things that one is passionate about, but I really do think that it has to do more with like a one-on-one relationship. That's just much more how the card is put forth. So let's look now at the future for you, Aries. In the future, we do have grief. And this is another Saturnian card, like thought. Now, in the other deck that I have, this is also desolation. So to me, what that indicates is that not necessarily that this relationship is getting in the way of your progress, but perhaps it is diluting your focus. And that in order to really bring this thought into fruition, there is going to have to be some particular set of circumstances in which you find yourself quite alone. Now, I, of course, don't really predict breakups in readings because they're general. It could be different for everyone. It could even just be a particular period of time where you are. This is a different card, too, from the Hermit. But there could be some trial that you have to go through. I'm trying to find the right words to talk about this because I think overall it has the potential to be good and transformative. And there's a lot of really good and transformative stuff going on for you in the current situation. It is possible that when we're talking about this card with passion, that there are elements to this that might involve things like sex addiction that might interfere with a relationship. And that's not to place blame on any party of that relationship. That's just kind of how it goes sometimes. And, everybody's human, everybody's got flaws. Sorry, I am a little bit sick with allergies. Up here in the hopes and fears, let's see if I can get back in focus. We have there we go. We have the deduction card. You want to be able to rationalize your way through this. Again, we have the moon showing up here. The moon is cyclical. There is a lot to do with logic. This person coming through the doorway as though things have been revealed to them, right? And because it's showing up in your hopes and fears, I think it's very much that you're hoping that you'll be able to rationalize your way through this particular situation. We have a lot of Saturnian energies here and not a lot of Mercurial energies, which are about movement, which are about taking steps forward, right? Saturnian energies are very good for protection because they're very stable and they're very slow moving when they do move at all. So, just a lot to consider with that. We do also have lunar energies coming through with this learning card. Both of these are lunar cards. So perhaps you are the one doing the learning. This wouldn't necessarily be counsel. There's another card in this deck about counsel. But it could be learning techniques that are psychology based that you could apply to your own life. But that would be very different from what we consider like therapy and counseling. This would be more like from an educational standpoint. So up here in the midheaven, no glove fit. I don't wear gloves in the tarot streams because I'm handling playing cards and tarot cards. So the midheaven, remember we were looking at generosity down here in the Imam Silai and this priest offering to the gods. Here in the midheaven, the result of that is going to be cooperation. It's possible that in this moment of desperation, you do something out of desperation that ends up appealing to those around you and brings in that help. Now, I'm not necessarily an advocate for, coming from a place of scarcity. You always want to come from a place of being able to offer something to the people around you. But we do here have this card of cooperation, which can lead to creative discovery. There are a lot of parallels between this card of cooperation and the card of thought, right? Here, the person is constructing a statue. In this one, we have two people, and they are constructing this pillar. And we also have implications down here at the bottom of this cooperative relationship between birds and cattle, in which the birds eat the flies that are trying to swarm around the cattle. And this would be a Neptune correspondence card. So things being open, there being flexibility, that mutable water energy of Pisces kind of tied in with that. But also with Neptune, sometimes you see about communion with the higher power. So I do think that there will be a good outcome to this. This would be like immediate future. Like you might already even know that this is going to happen. The final outcome, I'm just going to have to clarify with the art of war, because this one is not a good card to end on. It is uncertainty. We have two figures here going in opposite directions. They're dressed almost identically. This figure has the Eye of Ra. This figure has, again, a was scepter, like what we saw the priest holding on the transmutation card, right? So this might even be two fragmented parts of a spirit. We can see that they are in the duat. That's what this hieroglyph means right there. And we do have the symbol for Pluto down here as well. So, of course, depending on what you believe, one of the theories is that spirits fragment and recombine in order to reincarnate into different physical forms and have those experiences kind of shared across humanity. So this figure has that power of the Eye of Ra. This figure has the power of the wasp scepter. And they are probably fine to each go in their own direction, but they're consulting with each other. And that is what leads to uncertainty. So, as I said, now in the context of this cooperation, that's definitely, you want to both be headed in the same direction, right? But it is possible, Aries, to have a collaborator for some time, and then you have an amicable parting of ways, and you're both able to go on and do your own things, right? But I know one guy who knew a lot about personal dynamics, and that's Sun Tzu. So let's see what he has to say about it. Oh, this is actually in the introduction. Okay. Without pinning our faith to the accuracy of details supplied by the Wu Yue Chun Chu, or admitting the genuineness of any of the treatises cited by P.E. Sun, we may see in this theory a probable solution of the mystery. Okay, here we go. Between Susuma, Qian, and Pangku, there was plenty of time for a luxuriant crop of forgeries to have grown up under the magical name of Sun Tzu, and the 82 PN may very well represent a collected edition of these lumped together with the original work. So, in fact, what we think of as being the art of war was also a collaborative effort. And that uncertainty might come when it's time to hand out the accolades. As I mentioned, those two guys that I don't know their names, you might know their names. I wouldn't make any assumptions about that. But we all know the art of war is written by Sun Tzu. But as a matter of fact, just like other historical texts, it had been added to over time and more information added. So go into that cooperation with that understanding. You might be starting with source material. You might be working with collaborators. What we see now as a complete work itself was once very uncertain. Allow that uncertainty to remain, and don't strive too hard to discern its meaning before the time.
All right, Aries, so that is going to conclude your reading for this week. I will be going over to the member side of the channel after the conclusion of this live stream to do some crystal scrying with this beautiful piece of obsidian. You are cordially invited, but of course, your presence is appreciated in whatever form it takes.
So now we are going to move on to the sign of Leo. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, possibly, I had to restart. So maybe I didn't mention it in the restarted video. But I went very long yesterday. So that's probably what this week will be like.
Yes, Leo time, Lenore. Thank you for coming. I hope I pronounced your screen name properly. But I recognize you. Hello.
So Leo, if you would relax and gently allow any questions that you have to float up to the forefront of your thoughts. Wait there gently. If these are things that cause anxiety or tension in your heart and mind, just gently breathe through that energy. Inhale and draw in the divine white light of Source. And then exhale and release all of that back to Source where it can be transmuted. Okay, so let's see what we have here. Lots of reversals, huh? Okay. All right, not all reversals. Well, that's good. Interesting. Interesting. Let me write down your timestamp. So we're going to start in the past. The card that we have there, this card is called Impediments. And it looks like this nice lady with 2 children. Everything's very calm, very normal, right? Wrong. So what is actually going on here is that you see that this one young person has a piece of kelp or seaweed dangling from their hand. These are actually mischievous water imps, kind of like minor water demons. And this woman has this protective bouquet of flowers in her hand, and then in her other hand she has this stick to fend them off. This is Uranus energy. And this card is showing up reversed in the past. So this probably means that you are leaving these obstacles behind you, and that things which once stood in your way, you were able to overcome. In the current situation, we have the Temperance card reversed. So it takes a lot of practice and patience to pour water between those two containers. And this card in this deck, we have Jupiter in Cancer as our correspondence. So not quite like the Sagittarius correspondences that you see in other decks, but still quite similar. Jupiter in Cancer would be about expansion of one's emotional self to better accommodate the emotional beings around the self. Now, with the Temperance card here in the reverse, this can be a lack of patience. It can also be not practicing things that you should be practicing. If you're trying to get better at something, not having the discipline to carry through with that. But specifically in this deck, it might have more to do with running out of patience with the people around you. So crossing this card, we have the Communion card. And communion, this would be a bit like marriage. I think these two people are probably about to get married. We have Mars energy here. We have a union of opposites through fire. This is like a flame, an incense, a censer of some kind, a thurible perhaps. So that union occurring through the passion of fire. We also see in the bouquet that this person is holding two different colors of flowers. So this might be occurring within a marriage, but this communion card, because we are talking about people being together, it could also be like a workplace where contractually you are obligated to be around certain people every day, all day long. It could be a business partnership. It could be a very close friendship or a roommate. Down here in the Imam Silai. So I like to imagine that on top of my Celtic cross spread, I have a 12 houses wheel, and down at the bottom is the Imam Silai, which is all of the origins and foundations upon which the midheaven or goal or destiny will be built. So down in the Imam Silai, we have presentiment. And presentiment is more like foreshadowing than it is like precognition. It is a bit of pre-knowing, of understanding things that haven't happened yet. And again, we have two figures depicted on this card. So it could even be that one of these people is acting as the conduit for the channeling, and the other person might be recording or observing that. This would also be Uranus energy, like what we saw here with the impediments card. So, and this card is showing up reversed. So there might be situations in this relationship in which one of you is saying, hey, we really need to look out for this or that or the other thing. And the other person is saying, no, I don't really see that. I don't see that happening. And that being the cause of some of this frustration coming out with the Temperance card in reverse. And might be causing the party who is having these particular presentiments to doubt themselves, right? So, here in your perspective, Leo, in your perspective, we have the Star card, which in this deck is called Hope and is the energy of Saturn in Libra. So now the figure, instead of pouring the two colored liquids between two vessels like this, now the figure is in a state of undress and is pouring very similar liquids onto the ground beneath. This is hopes and dreams coming to fruition. One could almost see it like in this way, the hopes and dreams are being all mixed up. This is the incubation of the hopes and dreams here. And in this card, the celestial being is releasing that down onto the earth in its final form to come into being. So you see at this time, hopes and dreams are coming true. The Star card can also be about social groups. Saturn in Libra is establishment of partnerships. It is defense of equanimity, protection of equanimity, things like that can be under Saturn in Libra. From an outsider's perspective, Leo, we have a card that in this deck is called Imagination, but in the other deck that I have, the title it is given is actually Delusion. And this is a Neptunian energy. And of course, Neptune being very watery energy and somewhat unclear. Neptune is kind of like the higher vibration of the moon energy. And so where you see Neptunian energy, you think of like how the moon card is about that unclear path, perhaps beset by danger. And this would be similar to that. So delusion, we have the set animal down here. We have this dancer, and you can see that her movements are a little haphazard. She might be intoxicated. And we have the sistrum here. This could be during one of the festivals celebrating drunkenness. So other people, where you see your hopes and dreams coming true, they might think that you are crazy. Hope everything's okay out there. And again, one person might be seeing things one way, and the other person might be seeing things very differently. Here in the future, we have the Chariot card, Triumph. And this is Neptune in Pisces energy. So anything being possible, strong intuition. And this card being in the reverse in the future, the potential for this exists, but you might not see how it will come to pass. We do have two different sphinxes, again depicting a polarity with white and black there, and they are moving in two different directions, kind of like what we were seeing in the Aries reading with the uncertainty card. And this figure is moving forward, so there is a lot of implication of mobility. But if you see, in the one hand, they're holding a staff, and in the other hand, they're holding a knife. They're not necessarily driving this chariot or instructing the beasts which way to go. So it's kind of a self-propelled type of energy. that it's kind of moving on its own. You might not necessarily be guiding the action, and the people around you who seem like they might be responsible for driving that action, they also might not be. So things being a little unclear right now. But it looks like there is a lot of potential for things to move forward in a good way. Here in the hopes and fears, we have the Wheel of Fortune in this deck called Retribution and associated with Pluto in Scorpio. So we have either Ra here or Horus the Elder, perhaps, and Taweret, who is one of the protectors in childbirth, and I think one of the aspects of the goddess Isis. We have from the Chariot card here, similarly, where we have this white sphinx on the Chariot card, we have a white sphinx here at the top of the Wheel of Fortune, showing that the right path or the correct path is chosen. Now, you could be hoping for a change in fortune for the better. And I do see some promise here for that. Up here in the midheaven, we have the Weaver. Now, the Weaver, we have Isis, again, suckling the baby Horus. And we have a woman who is working at a loom. And this card is associated with Venus. It's kind of a lesser form of the Empress card. This would have to do with traditionally feminine careers, with a big girl boss energy. And it's going to be something that you don't see coming. It might be something that you have not prepared yourself for. But this would be very good for career energy, whether you identify more as masculine or feminine in your energies. It could be specifically in a field that is traditionally feminine, such as nursing, where we know that there are quite a few male nurses or masculine nurses, right? So it's not just women in that field. And it could be that this is a victory that you weren't expecting. Your goal might have been something completely different, but that being where you end up. And the final outcome, we have the Avarice card, and it's showing up reversed. So this also is going to be a Saturnian correspondence. Avarice is about hoarding resources. So you might end up being very wealthy, but also very generous. But there's not a lot of greed to what is going to be happening with you in the future. And that might be what the implication is here with the Chariot card in the reverse too. That perhaps what your initial vision was built too much on greed. And so the key to opening up that door of success is going to be generosity, much like we saw in the Aries reading. And generosity can look all kinds of ways. And avarice can look all kinds of ways. Can be stingy with one's energies. Now, I do think that it's good to be careful with what you put your energy into. Not everybody deserves your energy. Not everybody needs your energy. And especially where we see this temperance card with the fluids being poured back and forth. Sometimes cups in the tarot represent our emotions. Could represent pouring your emotions into something that you're not going to be able to get that energy back out of. And in fact, on this card, if I can get my servo to stop messing around. Okay, there we go. We have quite a few. These could be barrels or of wine or beer. And we have a big vessel here at the bottom. So maybe it's encouraging you to be more emotionally open and vulnerable with others. And that being a way of kind of opening the door to some new possibilities for yourself. All right, Leo, so now I'm going to read to you a passage from The Art of War. Thus, without waiting to be marshaled, the soldiers will be constantly on the qui vive. Without waiting to be asked, they will do your will. Without restrictions, they will be faithful. Without giving orders, they can be trusted. So I'm going to need... Okay, I'm going to have to go back up to the top because that requires a little more context. Throw your soldiers into positions whence there is no escape, and they will prefer death to flight. Soldiers, when in desperate straits, lose their sense of fear. So they're basically saying, keep your soldiers, maybe coworkers, allies, keep them in a place where they are reliant on you for certain things, and you will be able to ask whatever you want of them. Now, that's something to keep in mind because, of course, in relationships, we talk a lot about codependency issues and how that can skew the dynamics of relationships. And indeed, when people are too reliant on partners, it doesn't just feed that feeling like they'll never be able to pay them back. There can also be feelings of resentment that crop up there as well. So just something to keep in mind for the Leo reading. And the same with, coworkers or employers. If you are the only one at a job who can do a certain task and they're reliant on you for it, then they should be very happy to meet your demands. Especially if you are approaching without avarice. All right, so that is going to conclude the Leo reading for this week. And after I am finished with the Sagittarius reading, I'm going to go over to the member side of the channel and do crystal scrying with this piece of obsidian. So I might change my battery now. I'm going to change my battery very quickly, and then that way I won't run out of battery in the middle of the reading. So give me just one moment here. Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. So now we're going to move on to the sign of Sagittarius. And I'm going to go ahead, shuffle your cards, Sagittarius. If you would like, just allow any thoughts or things that you'd like to cover in the reading to float up to the forefront of your mind, and wait there patiently while I shuffle. Now, if these things are stressful to you, go ahead and breathe through that energy. As you inhale, breathe in the divine white light of Source. And as you exhale, just exhale any of that tension or stress or negative energy that you've been holding on to, and it will return to Source and it will be transmuted. Okay. So let's... Oh, that's a very good card for you to get, Sagittarius. Okay. I have to drink some tea. I'm sorry. Well, I'm not sorry, but I have to drink some tea. I get very dried out when I take allergy medicine. Okay. So now let me write down your timestamp. Okay. All right, Sagittarius, let's see what we have here in your past. This is a Mercury correspondence card. We have a woman here holding a beautiful flower. This could be a lily. We have the goddess Hathor up here at the top, depicted with the cow's head and the lunar disc between the horns. And the name of this card is Affinity. It could also be called Attraction. So there could be an attraction between you and another person. There could also be a situation you are attracted to, Sagittarius. Something you're attracted to doing, or something you're attracted to buying, something that you are attracted to. And because that is in the upright, this would be a situation which is continuing from the past into the current situation. So here in the place of the significator, we have this card, which is the Sun card, but in this deck it's called Inspiration. And interestingly enough, in this deck, that energy would be Pluto in Sagittarius. So powerful transformational energy for your sign, Sagittarius. The Sun card is always good to get in a reading, whether it is reversed or upright, it doesn't matter. But in this case, because it's upright, I can see that in the current situation, things are going quite well for you. You might have a lot of wonderful things going on around you right now. The crossing card energy, we have, this is a Mars corresponding card, so action-oriented. And it's called Examination. So this would be a little bit like the Judgment card. We have Thoth here recording that the heart and the feather weigh exactly the same. Thoth in two forms, or perhaps that's one of the sons of Horus. And then we have down here Amit, the devourer. So what happens is that your heart and the feather have to be exactly the same weight, not lighter, not heavier. Otherwise, your soul is devoured and you don't get to go on to the promised share of land that you have waiting for you in the afterlife. So the implication of this, along with this sun card energy, that even though everything's going really well, there might be a process of evaluation occurring for you, Sagittarius, that you might be feeling like, when is the other shoe going to drop? Or you might be going through reviews at work, and that's a little bit stressful, but for the most part, everything's really good for you. All of those things are possibilities. It's kind of a life or death situation, which seems strange because, how can everything be going so well and yet in this life or death situation? So down in the Imam Silai, that's going to be down here at the bottom. I like to imagine that my Celtic cross has a 12 houses spread laid out on top. So down at the bottom is the Imam Silai, which is the origins and foundations upon which all of the things up in the midheaven will be built. And the card that we have showing up there is patrimony. So we have the sun correspondence here. And in Egyptian art, hierarchy is shown. It was a very hierarchical society with the pharaoh at the top, the gods at the top, and then everyone else beneath. So the gods and the pharaohs were all shown to be the same size because they were the same rank. And then everyone else is depicted as being smaller. So we know that this is a very important figure and that these people are bringing tribute to this person. Patrimony does have implications of a patriarchal society, of course. And then here, I believe the name of this back leg is Meschanet and has to do with seasons of the year. So half of the deacons were assigned one name and the other half were assigned another name, the unwearying and the untiring or something like that. And could have to do with certain deaconal correspondences as far as this card is concerned. But the sun was a major provider to the Egyptians. They understood that it was the light of the sun that helped the crops to grow and everything like that. Could be a very destructive force as well. So the implication being that the person here on this card was just as important as the sun, and keeping that person happy and well cared for was very important. Now, there might be something like that going on in your own life, Sagittarius. Whether you hold a place of importance at your workplace and people strive to make sure you're happy, or whether that's in a relationship. And remember, we do have this card of affinity down here. So there's definitely something you've got a taste for. And this patrimony, it could be you or the person who is receiving this tribute. You could also feel like in your life that there's somebody, a boss, a supervisor, even a partner sometimes, or a father who must be kept appeased and content. From your perspective, down in your perspective, we have the death card, which in this deck is called immortality. We can see this figure, the Osiris, in his very own grain field in the afterlife, threshing wheat. We do have two flowers depicted up here. These might be papyrus. They could be lotus. This is a Mercury in Gemini correspondence. So something to do with short distance travel and perhaps communication as well. The immortality card in this case, remember, when we go through this examination, what is at stake is not just one's immortal soul, but one's property rights in the afterlife as well. So it's very interesting. And when you go through, like the Book of Gates is a really good example of this, because they go through all of the different parts of the afterlife that the dad over here that I have tattooed on my arm, he's getting ready to enter, right? And not all of them are scary. Some of these parts of the afterlife are actually, where they have the wheat fields of the afterlife, and everybody gets a plot of land, a share of land there. And so this immortality card being a little bit different in this deck, that there is transformation involved in that, but it's kind of based around these ideas too. So this being more transformational in this case than the immortality, because immortality is forever, right? Then the transformation is over. So you could be owed something, and that would be where the patrimony is coming in. And it could be based on this examination. From an outsider's perspective. So Sagittarius, from an outsider's perspective, we have uneasiness, and it's showing up in the reverse. So this is another Mercury correspondence card. And you could think about this card kind of like the Five of Wands, or a bit like the Three of Swords, maybe. We have the heart here, now is in the reverse. And it's in the upright because the card is reversed, but we'll get into that in a little bit. These three figures are standing, and then we have one figure who, remember I was saying that in Egyptian art there was a hierarchy and it's shown through size. So in this particular card, this person who is kneeling is the same size as these other people, but they're kind of reducing themselves. So somebody could be perceiving about you at this time that because you are not reducing yourself, that it has the potential, because again this card is reversed, it's not in the upright, that if they put you above anybody else, because again we've got the heart there, right? The heart showing up that you've been through that trial and your heart weighed exactly the same as the feather, right? So technically speaking, you should be given your plot of land, right? But that honoring that agreement with you might end up creating turmoil in this situation as a whole. So this very much seems like kind of a workplace situation. And affinity here could be more money, could be, it could even be that you're just a very attractive employee to have. Maybe physically attractive, but, probably also that you bring a lot to the job, And again, this doesn't even necessarily have to be about a career. It could be about a program that you're a part of. It could even be a social dynamic in a friend group. So there are a few different ways that this could play out. I'm going to trust for you to discern how it applies to your own life. Here in the future, we have the card of indecision. This would be the Lover's card, but in this deck it is called indecision. And this is going to be Venus in Taurus energy. And we have the person has a clear preference for this option, as shown by the arrow and the gaze. But perhaps both options are equally good, or perhaps he's drawn to this side because of some meddling. You never know. Like, is this really the best option? And because this card is in the reverse, I think that you will be presented with a choice. And the outcome of that choice might be a binary choice. Now, I don't know if these two things have anything to do with each other, too. Because if you have affinity for one of the options, obviously that's what you're going to choose. Up here in the hopes and fears, we have the purification card. This is very interesting. We've got these two fluids pouring out of vases. It represents the two lands, the red land, and then there was like the white crown and the red crown. I'm very sorry. It sounds like somebody is having a hard time in the other room. But don't worry about that too much. Down here at the bottom, we have the brown carp, the Nile carp. Up here, we have the sun god, Re. And this has to do with purifying oneself. It might have to do with making this decision. You might want to make absolutely sure that you will pass this test. That might be what this purification is about. Hoping that you will be able to have the scale weigh out. These are both Mars correspondence cards. And this is appearing in the upright. So up here in the midheaven, and I apologize if my words seem a little garbled today. It's very hard for me to track well when I am having allergies, and I take a lot of medicine for it. Up here in the midheaven, we have premeditation. So this person is planning a lot before they activate those plans. We have Neptune here, so very much in the contemplation of things, the possibility of things. We have Aker down at the bottom, who is a god of the two horizons, a lion god with two heads. And that is going to be based upon this with the patrimony. So whether you are the important figure here, or whether someone else is filling that role in your life at this time, could be that you, based on that experience, the next time you get into a similar experience, you really think about it a lot ahead of time, or you really plan how to talk to that person. You really plan out every move in that particular interaction so that you come through very pure. very pure of intention, very pure of however you need to come across to make what you need to make happen. And the final card in your reading, Sagittarius, is very interesting because what we have is contrition. And now this is a Pluto correspondence card, but very similar to here what we saw with patrimony, right? We've got one figure who's very large, and then we have another figure who is a lot smaller. In this case, tribute is being paid to the pharaoh, and in this case, tribute is being paid to the pharaoh or to a powerful person. But there are some very key differences, right? These are things. All the humanity has been stripped from this person. They're just a captive now, a piece of property. Here we have people actively bringing things to this person. There's more of a person-to-person relationship here. This would be almost like the relationship between employee and supervisor, whereas this would be employee and corporation, right? So I don't know if this is about you moving up the corporate ladder. It might be that you were able to convince your supervisor or your boss that you wanted a certain thing implemented, but then when it came to the legality of the issue, or it came to corporate says something different. It could also be that corporate backs you up, but in a way that maybe makes you feel like you are beholden to them now. It's a very interesting reading, Sagittarius, for you today. And I hope that it resonates with you. And of course, this could be a workplace. This could be in a family dynamic, especially if there is a clear patriarchy within your family, or somebody who calls all the shots, right? This could even be a court case. Now, we didn't have the justice card show up here, right? But we did have examination. And we did have this initial process. And then we've got an appeals process coming through, right? So there are a few different ways that you could interpret what I've put out there for you, Sagittarius. And I hope that you will be able to figure out how it applies to you. Now, I'm going to read to you a little quote from The Art of War as our bibliomancy today. No, I already turned to that page. Okay. When you engage in actual fighting, if victory is long in coming, then men's weapons will grow dull and their ardor will be damped. If you lay siege to a town, you will exhaust your strength. And when this happens, other chieftains will spring up to take advantage of your extremity. Then no man, however wise, will be able to avert the consequences that must ensue. So really pay attention to your energy levels during this process, Sagittarius. That is what that quote is telling me. Because remember that we got in the place of the significator the Sun card, which shows me that everything's going pretty well for you right now. It might be a very transformative time for you, Sagittarius, but things are pretty much good. So just be very careful about getting involved in any kind of process that's going to be very long and drawn out and that is going to deplete your energy, no matter how much you are drawn to the result. So that really brought everything back home on that reading. Thank you for joining me today
I'm going to go now over to the members side of the channel and do the crystal scrying. So if that is something you are interested in, you are cordially invited to join us. But your presence here on the channel is appreciated in whatever form it takes. Thank you to everyone who is here during the live streams and talks in the chat. I greatly appreciate it. It's always good to hear from you. Thank you to all of you who watch my videos later. And thank you for your likes, your comments, your subscriptions, and for sharing this video with others. And until next time, I look forward to seeing you again very